Hello everyone, today with this video I'm going to present how to create and set up a Python local environment with virtualenv and different tools. Because many times when I work for several customers and I worked for developer teams, I saw many developers aren't comfortable with Python, and I wanted to propose to the community a way and the best practices to create a Python local environment. And with this example, the local application corresponds to a GCP application. And I will show how to create a Python local environment with Pipenv firstly. That is a popular tool to create a local environment and to manage packages, Python packages. I will use the same use case with Poetry, a second tool similar to Pipenv to prepare the environment. And at the end, I will show you how to create a local environment with Devbox, that is a tool based on Nix. Firstly, some words about me. My name is Mazloum Tosun. I am a Google developer expert on Google Cloud and also a CDO at GroupBiz. GroupBiz is a freelancer group in France, and if you have questions about GroupBiz, feel free to send me some private messages in social networks. For the videos, all the videos are published in my YouTube channel, and all the code is also proposed in my GitHub account, and I will add all the project in the video description. I am also active in social networks, in LinkedIn and X, and feel free to follow me in order to follow my content. And for the explanation of the use case, I will jump on a schema from Exalidro. Here, firstly, as I explained previously, I will firstly create a local environment with Pipenv. Pipenv is a way to manage our packages from our local machine, for example. It's based on a pip file, and in the pip file, we will add and list all the needed Python packages. I will show you after in the code demo how to do that. After to create this environment with Pipenv, we will execute the application from our local machine, and to manage all the Python versions, we will use a tool called PyEnv, because natively, if you work on Linux or Mac, natively we have Python installed globally in our system, and many times we don't want to use this Python install in our system, but we want to have the flexibility to install all the needed Python versions in our machine. And that's why I really recommend to use PyEnv, because with PyEnv we have the possibility to install all the needed Python versions in our machine, and we can set the expected and needed version, and to prevent some collision on the global Python version installed globally in our system. I will show you after in the code demo. With PyEnv, we can install several versions and set globally the versions. After to set this version, the needed tools like Pipenv and Poetry can target to the version set previously by PyEnv. It's a really good way to manage several Python versions from our machine. There is also another tool called Direnv. Direnv is really interesting because for the Python ecosystem, I really recommend to isolate an environment. For example, for each project, it's really important to isolate the environment for this project, because each project will have these packages and the needed packages. And if we don't apply this isolation, we can have a collision between projects. And to prevent to have collision, it's interesting to and important to have an isolated environment per project. And it's normally, natively, with Python, we need to load the virtual env when needed and unload it when needed and when we will jump in another project. But it's not practical to do that manually. That's why I propose in this use case the Direnv tool, because Direnv allows to load and unload the virtual environment automatically. When we will jump into the folder, Direnv will detect the current virtual environment and will load it for us. And when we will left the folder, we will unload automatically the virtual environment. And it's very interesting because with Direnv we can automate this process and to prevent to do that manually. And I wanted to present you this tool in this use case in order to help the community to do that automatically instead of manually. When we will prepare the first environment, it corresponds to the GCP local application. This application will read file from locally or from GCS and write the result to a BigQuery table. Our Python application need to be authenticated in Google Cloud. And to do that, we will use ADC, application default credential, and we will enter this command line gcloud auth application default login, and it allows to authenticate our local machine and cell sessions to Google Cloud with my current account, my user account. After to prepare the environment with Pipenv, I will present a second use case with Poetry. Poetry is a similar tool than Pipenv. It's based on a pipeproject.toml file, and I will show you in the code demo after how this file is formatted. At the end, the latest use case is based on Devbox. Devbox is a really interesting tool, and behind the scenes, it's based on Nix. For the first two use cases, is only based on Python environment. But if we want to use an environment not only based on Python, if we want to install other tools in our Devbox, we can also use this solution. In this example, for example, I have Python, Poetry, and also Terraform. Because sometimes I don't want to install Terraform globally in my machine, and maybe I need to have a different Terraform version per repo git and per Devbox. And it's interesting with Devbox because we can do that very easily. Per repo git and per Devbox environment, I can have my Python version, my Terraform version, and it's okay. Okay, for the schema, I jump in the code to show you the demo. I have this first project. I create 3 projects, one for Pipenv, the second for Poetry, and the latest with Devbox. For the first use case, the code is not really important here, but the logic is really simple. Sorry, I have some latency in my ID here. Okay, really sorry. Okay, yeah, and here I will load a file from GCS or locally, and at the end I will load the result to a BigQuery table. Really simple. After to present it the code, I have a main method here, and I will execute my application and my main method. Perfect. To give you some words about the PyEnv tool. PyEnv, we can install it globally in our machine. And after install it, we can check the version. PyEnv indicate me there is the Python system. It's the Python installed natively in my Mac and in the system. And I previously installed the two versions, the 3.8.1 and the 3.11.2. I can, with PyEnv, set a different version, for example, and check the install version. We see that we set this version, and I will set then the expected version for this use case, and the expected version is the 3.11. It's really interesting because I can manage and install all the needed Python version in my machine and then set the expected version. After to set the version, my tool can target to this Python version, and I prevent collision with the Python installed in my system. The second tool to propose is Direnv. For Direnv, I can, because with Pipenv, I will create my virtual environment, and then I can load and unload this virtual environment. For Pipenv, there is a command line Pipenv shell. It will create a subshell and also create a virtual environment for me directly with this command line. I executed this command previously, and I can check if my virtual environment was created as expected. I saw that is the case. I have my virtual environment. It's good. Then with Direnv, I want to load this virtual environment when I jump in the folder and unload it automatically when I left the folder. To do that, Direnv is based on a file .env, and in the .env, I have this command layout pipenv. Really easy. We only need to set this command in the env. Then, if I left the folder, Direnv automatically unloaded the virtual env. I can verify it with which Python tree, and I check that the Python version is the global and not the version from the virtual environment. It worked as expected. I will load my project again and jump in my project again, and I see that Direnv detected the current virtual environment and load it as expected. I verify it with the command. I have my virtual environment and it's okay. It worked as expected. After presented PyEnv and also Direnv to load and unload the virtual env, I show you the file, the pip file for Pipenv. I need to propose this code block to be able to download the Python packages from PyP. After this, I have two blocks, one for dev packages and the other for the other packages. I have PyTest, for example, to execute some unit tests, and I need to use Google Cloud BigQuery and other Python packages from PyP. An important things here, I need to set the Python version from Pipenv. And here, as I presented previously with PyEnv, my current version in my machine is the 3.11. That's why I need here to have the same version in the Pipenv configuration file. It's really important to do that and to set the same version between the version used by the machine and the version used by Pipenv. After this, I can install my packages with this command line pipenv install --dev, it install all my Python packages in my virtual environment, and it generate for me a pip file lock. And the pip file lock is interesting because it generate a hash for each package. If for any reason some team change a release from PyP, this kind of system prevent set a hash and prevent the downloading of the same release from my current environment. And it will, if the release change for any reason, Pipenv will detect it because the hash will be different in this case, and will indicate me that there is an issue. And it's an interesting system to bring more security for our Python management version. I think it's good. After I created my environment, but in my local ID, IntelliJ ID, I want to be comfortable and I want to be able to launch my Python application directly from my my ID. And I also want to have a comfortable environment and to have the possibility to navigate to all the packages. For example, I can access to all the classes and methods from the BigQuery Python package. And it's really interesting for me to have a comfortable environment to work efficiently. And to do that with IntelliJ ID, I have this menu, file project structure, and with IntelliJ ID, I can create some SDK, Python SDK. I have this menu, SDKs. I click on plus, add Python SDK from disk. After this, I have a support to create a Pipenv environment. I need to select the base interpreter. In this case, the base interpreter is the Python tree from PyEnv. And it will auto-detect my pip file and my pip file lock. And I already created my SDK. We only need to click on OK. After to click to OK, it will generate the current SDK here. The SDK detects all the packages and prepare the packages for us. And after this, in the project menu, I only need to select the SDK created previously by IntelliJ, selected, and click on OK. And then the IntelliJ ID will refresh its index. And after this, we have the possibility to have a comfortable environment and navigate in all the needed files, method, classes, and so on. And after this, to prepare this environment from IntelliJ ID, I also have the possibility to launch my application directly here from the ID, and I will launch it. I click on this button, and normally it will execute my application as expected. Sorry, I forgot an important thing. Before to have the possibility to launch my application, I need to be authenticated in Google Cloud. I need to authenticate my local machine in GCP, and I did that previously. That's why it worked. But normally the command line to be authenticated in GCP is gcloud auth application default login. It uses ADC behind the scenes. I execute this command line and I can be authenticated in GCP, and normally it will be good, authorized, and it's okay. In this case, ADC generated a short-lived credential in my local gcloud configuration, and after this, all my application from my local machine can be executed in GCP because I am authenticated as user. I'm my current user. My current user is mtoson@groupbiz.fr, and it's okay. I executed the application I can check the result from BigQuery, from the BigQuery table. I refresh my table, and I have the expected result. I will empty the table, and jump in the second use case with Poetry. For Poetry, I have the same principle. I have this configuration file pyproject.toml. I click on this file, and I firstly have some description for my current project, and I need to indicate that the package mode is false, because I don't want to create a package and publish a package, for example, locally and from PyP and directly in the PyP repo. I only need to prepare an environment, a local environment with Poetry. The same principle done for Pipenv. I need to indicate the Python version in Poetry, and this version need to be the same than the global Python version installed in my machine. And the Python version is 3.11. In this block, I will give all the Python packages with this syntax, and it's okay. I can install every element as expected. For Direnv, the principle is the same. We only need to create a .env file with this command layout Poetry. And after this, I have the same principle presented previously for Pipenv. If I left the directory, I will unload the virtual env automatically. And if I go again in my folder, it will load the virtual env as expected automatically. I can check it, and I have my virtual environment was loaded as expected. Poetry created this virtual environment for me previously, and it's perfect. And I can directly install my package in the current virtual environment. The package were installed previously, and it's okay. And my environment is ready. I can launch my application with Poetry. And for to prepare the SDK in IntelliJ, the principle is the same. We click on project structure, and from project structure, we can add the SDK from disk. And we have a native support, a native element to create the SDK from my current Poetry environment. I can select the base interpreter for the Python version, and it will automatically detect the Poetry environment from the poetry.toml and the Poetry lock. After to create the SDK, I can load it in my project here, and it's okay. IntelliJ will use this SDK, and I can navigate in every method, classes, and element for the open source packages installed in my current virtual environment. For the Poetry lock, the principle is the same that for the Pipenv. I have a hash for each installed package. After to do that, my environment is ready, and I can launch my application from IntelliJ and my local machine. It will normally work as expected. It's okay. I jump on the result in BigQuery and check my table again. I have the line as expected, and I will empty my table. Everything is okay. I will jump on the latest use case of this video. In this case, I use Devbox. For Devbox, as I explained previously in the schema, we have an input file and configuration file called devbox.json. In this configuration file, I will install Python, Poetry, and also Terraform for the example. Here, voluntary, I used a different Python version than the version installed in my machine by PyEnv. Because here, we will not use PyEnv because everything is managed by Devbox. We will also install Python here in our box. I have Python, Poetry, and Terraform. For Poetry, I used a different version than globally installed in my machine. After to do that, Devbox will generate a lock, and the lock is similar for the other systems. After to prepare my box. For the Devbox, for Direnv, I have a similar way to load my Devbox when I enter in my enter in my directory, and if I left my folder, I will also unload my Devbox. And in the official Devbox documentation, we can generate this command line and add it in the env.rc file. And the concept is really similar. Here, I can, for example, left my folder. It will unload my Devbox, and then I can load it again, and it load my box. And it's really okay. When you will start to work with Devbox, there is an initial command line devbox init. It generates the devbox.json for you. And it's interesting to do that. And there is also a command line devbox update. If you need to update the packages here for the Devbox, we can execute devbox update. Already is up to date. No need to install again. It's okay. And I can check every package is installed in my Devbox. For example, if I check the Python version, I have the Python 3.11. It's not the same version installed globally in my machine. It's really interesting because I can, in each GitHub repository and in each local and dev environment, I can have my own version, Python version. If I check the Terraform version, I have this version installed by my Devbox. For Poetry, I have the same principle. Poetry version, sorry. And I have this version, and this version is not the same than the Poetry version installed globally in my machine. Really perfect. I have all my environment, and after to prepare it, I will use Poetry in my Devbox. In addition to my Devbox, I need to use Poetry because Devbox will only help us to install every expected and needed tools in an isolated way. And after this, I will use the pyproject.toml, and I need to care about the Python version here. The Devbox use the 3.11 version, and in my pyproject.toml and also in Poetry, I need to give the same Python version. The same Python version between the Devbox and Poetry. It's really important to not forget that. My environment is ready, and for IntelliJ IDE, I can add and create the SDK. But in this case is a little bit different because there is no native support to create SDK from my Devbox like for Pipenv and Poetry. But if I install my and create my environment with Poetry and install the packages, Poetry generate this folder locally in my project, and this folder will not be published in the GitHub repository. But we and at every moment that we will install the package from Poetry, we can also target on the virtual env from IntelliJ IDE, for example. File, project structure. Then I can, from the SDK, I can select this option. I have add Python SDK from disk. And here, I don't have a native support to create the SDK from the Devbox environment, but I can select virtual environment and click on existing environment. And after this, I can select in the Python environment, I can select the version from the current Venv folder. After to do that, it will create the SDK, and after this, we can target on this SDK directly in the project menu. After to do that, our project is ready, and we can navigate in every needed element, like for the other examples. I am ready, and I can launch my Python application. I launch it and click on this button, and normally it will load the data in BigQuery as expected. And if I check the final table, I refresh my table, and normally it will be okay. I have some latency, network latency here, but it's okay. Perfect. For Terraform, to show a little bit that here for in my Devbox, I also for the example, I also added Terraform. And it's interesting because in my Devbox, I can install the expected Terraform version in an isolated way from my current GitHub repo and project. I create a fake dataset in my example, BigQuery dataset, and I can execute my Terraform code locally, and it's not mandatory in this case to install Terraform globally in my machine. I only need to install it in my Devbox. I can jump in my Terraform module, and if I check my Terraform version, it's okay. And if I execute the Terraform init command line, normally it will init my Terraform environment. After this, I can execute a Terraform plan command line. And here, for the example, I create a new dataset in my GCP project. And it's really interesting because I can test my Terraform code locally for the expected version. It's really practical and interesting. To finish the demo, I jump here, and we presented the 3 use cases with Pipenv, Poetry, and Devbox. We showed how to manage all the needed Python version from our local machine with PyEnv, the authentication in GCP with ADC to execute our GCP application from our local machine and IntelliJ IDE. I'm really happy to present it to this use case with the community. I hope you will learn something with this video. I will present new use cases very soon. Keep you posted, and feel free to subscribe to my YouTube channel to follow my content and also to boost my work for the Google Cloud community. And see you soon. Bye bye.